The title of today's talk is There is no shame in failure or losing. I'll try not to disclose or reveal any information about any third party companies or any other entities. But too often in life, we vilify shame and stigmatize those people as losers who quit too early. However, it's more of a Taoist concept that whereas the most, and it might especially bother the people in the Western world more, but in reality, well, not in reality, in truth, it's actually a more Taoist concept where the Taoist champion what other people abhor. I think Lao Tzu said something in the line of, I alone am depressed, wandering aimlessly, drinking from mother with mother capital M. Basically, the point that he wanted to convey, or the Taoists want to convey, is the fact that what you people abhor doing, I'll be that water in the drain, the lowest part, that untouchable that no one wants. Because ultimately, that's the essence of God. You go to India, Bangladesh, or other parts of the world, you see all these maimed, disabled people with no eyes, no arms, no legs, no amputees, filthy, some with snot coming out of their mouth. They're begging, they're out with outstretched hand and whatnot, and no one wants to be them. But you know who does? God does. And although Taoism is not inherently not a theistic religion, God in the guise of man sometimes presents himself as an avatar to show that just because you marginalize some people, it's the folly of human ego to assume that you can transcend and take over the whole universe. So going back to the original leitmotif, if you will, the guiding motive, we in a Western country, Western world, in America and whatnot, we say everything must, and even in China, like, forget about Western world, the whole world has become so global, such a globalist. We have such a globalist agenda. Everyone wants to get things done. We vilify people who quit too early. So it actually stems from actually a dream I had, and I don't want to reveal too much of a dream I just laid. I found out how special dreams can be to a person, so I don't want, and intimate, so I don't want to reveal much of that information, and I also don't want to point fingers at any companies or anything. But one time I attended a boot camp, and I quit. I couldn't sustain it anymore. And in the dream, pretty much, I found out that I still, in the subconscious, I still have a stigma underlying feeling of hurt that I failed, basically. And it's a recurring theme in my life. I failed and failed and failed. But and in Western country, we say it's such a cop out. Anyone can fail and quit anytime, and we stigmatize those people, whether you're fat, you're overweight, you're weak, you're fragile, you have osteoporosis, bone disease. It's like, at least, and I just saw two quotes. It says there is no shame in failing but giving up. There's no shame in being weak but staying weak. But that's exactly the same fucking point. You're basically shaming people for being weak and failing. But as people would later find out, I mean, you can't brute force your way through fucking, take COVID-19 for example. You can brute force your way through a tornado. You can brute force your way through fire. There are limits to human accomplishments. You can brute force your way to Everest. I mean, yeah, there are strategies you can take. There are special steps, and you can. And again, the Taoist concept can be flipped in reverse. You may not reach your goal in one day, but you can do it slowly and incrementally. So we trying to vilify and shame those people that, you know what, you're a cop out, you're a loser for failing, for giving up too early. But that's exactly what ego is. And some boot camps, they try to diminish, they try to get rid of the ego by saying you should cut through it like sword slashing cutting a Gordian knot. You should cut through all the bullshit and you should get things done. But it's just another egoic ego, and it's another egoic trap. It's ego, another egoic self in disguise. Because essentially, what you're saying is, no, come hell or high water, I'm gonna get this done. But you can't. You can't walk on water. You can't fly. You can't fucking. I mean, one of my passion in life was photographic memory, but I realized there are limits to it. Maybe if you're not born with it, maybe you can't force yourself to develop it. And there are times where you have to give up, submit. In Islam it means submit actually. In Taoist also it means yield. It's the yield concept. And exactly, you can't drive your traffic through the opposite way. I mean, you can't drive in the freeway. You're gonna get killed and murdered and slaughtered. So, although what a Taoist would argue is, yes, you're quitting and you're failing, but you know what? In the long run, you're probably surviving. Who knows? Maybe the boot camp I attended, I could have died of either tachycardia or rhabdomyolysis. There's something I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Rhabdomyolysis. It's a disease where the kidney failure happens and toxin builds up, and you die of heat exhaustion and continuous battery on your body. And in our culture, we, especially with the spate of all this exercise boot camp, we force people like as if I mean we don't force people, but we're like, we have this philosophy, we must force ourselves to get things done, and if you don't, you're somehow as a failure or weak and inept, and that some reflects on your personality. Taoists would argue the contrary. Maybe you are the dumb one for forcing yourself to get things done, even though knowing that you can't get many things done. That's ego. You can't freeze yourself to you essentially freeze yourself to death if you go to some lake and shut yourself under. Even there was a David Goggins story where he said abort, whether in the sauna or when there was the ice thingy, like where he dug, where he was about to get engulfed in those ice, the water, frozen lake or something. But so yeah, and this human ego is so it actually reflects more on your ego if you vilify someone just because you are endowed with a genetic lottery, or even if your life circumstances, you didn't become the way you are, the stud you are, this bodybuilder, this ripped guy who with 0% body fat, who can do these incredible things. You didn't become one day. It didn't happen to you one day. Their life circumstances, the decision you chose. Maybe, who knows? Sometimes you get lucky, and it's because of your ego that you want to accept the fact that you did get lucky. So, yeah, we marginalize those people, but essentially, Alan Watts would say, and one of my digital heroes, that maybe the square people are probably the far out people. So similarly, in that vein, maybe the most accomplished people are those weak people. And in even special forces or the ninjas, or when you do those seer, survive, escape, resist, survive, evade, resist, escape. Those seer training in army, you can't always brute force and smash your way through the target. You got to be sly, you got to be subtle, you got to be clever. And they said also a ninja special forces mindset. Not you cannot just walk through to a bomb blast and defuse the bomb. You gotta sometimes use a sly, subtle, surreptitious method in life. And same with life. That's why the Taoists praise the weak and the disabled and the weak, the failures, because maybe in the long run they'll survive. And again, without naming any companies, there have been cases where people have died from all these boot camp, from exercise. And the causes of death is also not ascertained, but it was right up. It was from those boot camps. Not to dissuade any people, but in our society we laud that that Olympian who did not give up even though his ankle broke, and he somehow made it. And again, with athletes, no matter how fucking alpha you are, you're always beta to some other alpha. You could be this UFC star or Navy SEAL guy, but you're gonna get sucker punched in the street by a random fucking chump. Maybe you caught off guard. The samurai, whenever they used to go to the inn, they would sit in such a way so their back was also always facing the wall, so that they're never caught off guard. But what's the trade off? What's the back the I mean, on the other side, you're basically living a life of paranoia, constantly looking over your target. So no one wants to be these people who give up too early. But you should realize, I mean, not realize, but if you think about it, the reason why people give up and quit is there's always some reason why the people succeed and why the reason people quit. Some people succeed because, okay, so you take chess for example. Maybe you were on a hot streak. Maybe other people started quitting, or you ended up in stalemate. And again, luck does play a favor. But so what happened was you got a boost, and then you started playing your best game. Maybe when you're young, you're praised for because you had an edge, whether you're having a good day, whether you're blessed, via genetic lottery, or whether you're just having a good day. Your parents were doing good, and you had a good food, you had a good lunch, and you just killed it on the baseball field. You're as a 6-year-old. Coach got impressed, and the upward spiral began. On the other hand, like the Joker, the movie Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, maybe you didn't get lucky. Maybe things were stacked up against you all the way in life. And then people say, "Yeah, don't be a loser, don't be a whine, don't cry." But that's an extremely, yeah, I mean, that's one of the most nincompoop, inept, and boorish way to dismiss someone, and just by saying that, oh, suck it up, grow a thick skin because it happened to you. But these are all legitimate cases, and that's why you have people like mental illness and suicide, and as the movie Joker, so beautifully and vociferously portrayed. Because just because you got somehow lucky and were on an upward spiral all your life, there was a movie called even Good Will Hunting, and the movie Rush, not Rush, sorry, Rush was with Christopher Hemsworth. That was called Driven. Driven was with Sylvester Stallone, and Sylvester Stallone gave him a speech like, all your life you've been winning. Same in Will Hunting, all your life you've been winning, and when finally when they meet this resistance, like when they realize they're not a winner and such a hotshot and bad as they are, it's a very hard pill to swallow and stomach. And that can be even more detrimental, and people cannot, bounce back, as quickly as they might assume, and they can probably cripple them for the life emotionally. So in our life, we champion those people who with grit and gritty teeth, who gnawed and clawed their way, whether it be Olympics, there's a Ironman triathletes, and I'm not knocking them, but at the same time, if you're gonna knock those people who weren't as lucky as you are, that's just utter arrogance, sort of blasphemous arrogance. That's what I was gonna say. The arrogance to think. I mean, what would have happened if God wasn't so kind and you were born in Africa or Bangladesh and as an orphan by the dumpster? And that's the extreme example. But what happened? Well, it is only because of nature, kindness, and compassion that the only things that shaped you was not because you had any control over it, but because it was nature's planning. Yeah, you had decisions and you could always, but really, you always had some decisions. Can you decision your way by slurping all the water of a Mediterranean Ocean, or climbing the Alps on one leg. Yeah, you can. And obviously you can, but there's a limit to it. There's limit to what certain things man can do, and that's why man are called man, and we're not God. And by man, I'm using the capital M. So as I was saying, God chooses to be these people who no one else wants, and that's a very Taoist concept. Because ultimately, maybe the people who quit and give up on, or give up not on life, but in general in their endeavors and pursuits, maybe they're the real winners. They're the ones who are going to survive for probably add 40 years of longevity in their life and live to tell about it, instead of just boorishly, like a fucking barbaric boor, this meathead blockhead says, "Oh, I'm gonna get things done no matter what," and they get a fucking shot in the head. That's not heroic. That's moronic. That's foolhardy. That's mindless bravado. And we glorify these people. Glorify the people who are, again, I'm not trying to knock on people who have been refrained from addict, but you get all these people who, who says refrain from addiction. You get these people who who are who abstain from all these drugs, but they become cranky and whatnot. And again, I'm not glorifying people, drug culture, and saying everyone should do drugs, but it's like society always champions this willpower over uh, will. I guess what's the opposite of willpower? Like will disempower. And this, again, my personality is, I love being empowered, I love empowering concept, I love all these people who does amazing things, impossible things. But again, you have to be realistic too. And again, when I was in my youth, I hated the term realistic. I thought that's a cop out, be realistic. Like, but again, in cricket, as much as I'm a fan of, as much fan of I am of it, if there are as much possibilities there's nothing impossible in cricket, because miracles happen. At the same time, with one ball remaining, you can't really fucking, and with 36 runs to get, you can't really do it unless you need extreme probabilities to get that done. So if you're in a path where you felt like me, where and nothing worked out, you were giving up, and but some things I did, I come across, like I did, achieve. Like, for instance, Rubik's cube, I thought it was impossible, but with steps I could do it. But suppose I could never do that, does it mean I'm dumb, or it doesn't mean I didn't follow the steps? You can, if you give some, no matter how genius you are, unless you know the algorithms, you cannot solve a Rubik's cube unless you're a savant, or chess, and if you're in physical or athleticism, you need to have certain foundation to achieve. It can be a fat and fucking looking like a slob and fucking climb Everest if you're 800 pounds and you're overweight. I mean, but that's just because you're one of those people doesn't mean God's spirit doesn't exist within you. No matter what society might tell you. And yeah, we do live in a culture where we say, oh, you're fat shaming, and we are anti body shaming, because what happened was the needle keeps going back and forth. Like, what happens, people, all these people, and that's one of the things I found out when I went to a gym. There are a lot of people who are overweight, but they're giving their best shot, and I wrote about it in their review of a boot camp. And not a boot camp, it's, well, of a gym. Like how we look at fat people in the street, and we shame them, and we looking at her disgust and contempt. But maybe it's you who are the problem if you have to look someone with contempt and shame, and say you are somehow the superior, with an air of superiority. You're walking around, trotting around in a haughty demeanor, thinking your shit don't stink, but you're better than someone else just because maybe life was kind to you. Maybe nature or God or source or universe, whoever you might want to call it, was kind to you. Nothing. You don't own anything. We talk about people, millionaires, having a sense of entitlement. What about having the sense of entitlement to talk about others who has a sense of entitlement? I mean, you know how Eminem said, "I find you offensive for finding me offensive." Yeah, I mean, anyone can play this game of superiority and upmanship. Oh, I'm better than you because I'm more humble than you. I'm better than you because, you're weak, you smoke, you're fat, but I'm somehow better than you because I don't. Really? You're judging someone, and me pointing out that you're judging the person who is judging, I am being judgmental. So where does it stop? Where does the buck stop? Maybe in the Hintergedanken, in the back of your mind, the witness. Maybe witness watches it all, and he just smiles and chuckles at the folly of humanity. How we're playing this game of superiority and one-upmanship, when it's all just a farce. It's a mirage. It's a fata morgana. It's a fallacy of human ego, to think that just because and that's what exactly ego is. Ego can also be surreptitious. So as I was saying, in life you can't always brute force your way. You can't, if there is this but people will laugh at me and say, but you're taking the easier. And so what? What's so bad about taking the easier route out? In fact, that's the most intelligent route. But that's cheating, and people cheat. People cheat in they use performance enhancing drug, and they're fine with it. They justify and convince themselves because they're doing it for performance enhancing. But you're cheating. People use DMT to essentially, that's a hack in life to your cheating. But they'll say, but I'm doing it for increase my productivity. And that's so stupid, actually. It's like saying, I'm going to kill my ego and by gritting your teeth. But essentially, you're being so egoistical as if to kill your ego. Just like Alan Watts would also probably side with me by saying, you're trying to, you can't. Teeth cannot bite itself. It's like you're trying to bootstrap yourself up. You're kind of trying to, pull yourself up like the Munchausen with your own hair. And that's absolutely absurd and folly. I mean, fallacious. And no way in hell can be accomplished. But, we in our society, we believe that not to say that maybe you shouldn't try or put effort, but I'm just inviting you to completely flip the scenario in its obverse negative image, so to speak, like a Taoist would, and entertain the idea. Maybe yes is no, failure is success, success is failure. What's so successful if you attend a boot camp and you fucking die of heat exhaustion or whatnot, as some people have, and or in battle, because we say, oh, that's glory, that's valor. Sure, but maybe that's not succeeding either. If you're robbed out of your life of the 30-40 years that you could have, probably. But then what's the point of living if you're already, I'd rather live than die like a miser and coward. Again, that's your ego that's speaking. What's so big deal about taking the easy way out, the living in like a miserly life? And maybe that's what God chose to be. That's the image that he wanted to be. He wanted to live a life as a disabled, but a happy life. Ignorance is bliss. Who knows? Probably isn't that ultimately what we're all seeking? Happiness and bliss? What's the big deal about being this weakling if you're having a, relatively content life? There's no shame in that. Don't shame those people just because life was kind to you at one point. And I know it's trending more of a rant, but then again, I wish I was. Well, I don't wish anything. If this is how I talk, this is how I talk. Before I used to feel guilty about not being an eloquent speaker, as if, again, that was some skill that can be cultivated. We beat down on ourselves, and the reason we beat down on other people is because we beat down ourselves. And there's some truth to that, to the idea. But yeah, in life you have to be sly, and that's essentially what a Joker does. He doesn't play by the rule. In life you cannot brute for you can you cannot like punch a mountain and expect it to crumble. That's absurd. I mean, that's not success. That's dumb. But we say we must try. Really? How long can you punch a mountain, or like fucking try walking on water? Like you'll fly before you flounder and fumble and freaking like drown, basically drown to death. There's you can't. It's absurd. It's only human ego and folly to think you can otherwise. So we vilify those people, saying, you're taking the easy way out. Maybe at least try. But why? Why try if you're the smartest thing is not to try. The smartest thing is probably not try. To fail, basically. If you know that you can, no matter how long, how much you flap your arms, you cannot fucking fly, actually. So what are you going to do? Put effort? But maybe you can put some wings. That's why all the humans have so much. Yeah, but that's not exactly flying, though. You're just twisting the whole agenda, the whole scenario. That's not flying. You Yeah, with it's technology, things have happened with photographic memory. Either for me, I'm not gonna use. I don't like using mnemonics or artificial crutches because that's not really photographic memory. We delude ourselves with this punch that is somehow there was this study with movies, like saying if you go to a movie, if you don't enjoy, but just because you paid $20 for the entrance fee, you somehow justify yourself by saying, oh, that was a great movie. But you're lying to yourself. You're being inauthentic. So a Taoist would argue, he wouldn't argue, he would just say, so what, big deal. And essentially, that's what God becomes. God becomes those people, marginalized, disabled, disfigured, mangled, ugly people who are weak, who has probably genetic disease, who didn't make it in life, who are the failures. And God does it. God pretends to be those human. Probably He's playing this game to see how other treats you. Maybe He could burst through that facade, this image, the veneer, and just reveal himself and probably do real quote unquote godly things. But he's not. He's probably sandbagging. Maybe God is a sandbagger. I actually wrote an article. God is a sandbagger. You can look it up. If I were God, essentially, sometimes maybe in life I would probably choose the weak route just to see. That's more fun. There's more challenge. A great actor's the testament of a great actor is not how badass or alpha he is. Sometimes it's probably maybe it takes more while and more nuance to be the beta male. Probably I'm not defending the stupid beta male, but again, there's another thing we vilify. Oh, you're beta cock, you're this nerd, whatever. But it takes more nuance to play this weak guy who no one wants to be, and that's why you get those Oscars to portray those guys as again. Another movie that I can think of right off the top is Score. If you would like look it up, where I just gave you the whole plot, basically the whole secret. But again, the great actor, the people who really shines are probably in those side roles, or with those roles where you barely see. Just like Morgan Freeman in God was actually the homeless guy, as revealed at the end of the movie. He was carrying a sign. So that's another thing. Ultimately, only thing you can do is probably give a big cosmic laugh and erupt in a burst of belly laugh. They say the folly of people to assume, because success at the end, success is failure, failure is success. Yeah, maybe who knows? Maybe when I opted out and I copped out and I quit, maybe I didn't. That was success in my life because I didn't want to die in a place where without far from my family, and probably that was the smartest thing to do. I'm not a failure. I'm not a. I'm not a weak. And so be it if I'm weak and failure, because ultimately that's success in my life. I'll end it on this note. There was this professor in our English class in high school, and her name was Mrs. Burns. May she rest in peace. I think she probably passed away. And I had a resentment towards her because she marked an essay and she kind of exposed some of my, I guess, I guess my I don't want to call it deficiency, but some of my, I guess, shortcomings. And I had a bit of resentment towards her. But she also had guardian, loving guardian, and there was a sense of community in her class. And once she found out that I got into a fight, alleged fight, and it wasn't a fight really, but an altercation rather. And she was saying, you know what? At the end of the day, the people who who cheers you on in a fight in the cage, they're not the ones who wants to fight. It's usually they're the ones who will always be on the sideline, either cheering or booing you because they are too afraid to uh, to get in the cage. Ultimately, it's you who have to pay for your decisions. And sometimes, if you had to, if you're sometimes being hero is actually being smart and wise and actually walking away. And there's no shame and there's no guilt in being a failure and loser, whatever, quote unquote, whatever society or label society puts on you. There's no shame in that. That's probably the smartest, wisest, and the most successful thing you can actually, a gift you can do is actually by quitting. Because when the foolish, foolhardy, dumb thing to do is to persist, knowing very well that in come hell or high water, in trillion years, there's no way you can do it. Just like there's no way you can roll dice and get six for like 24 billion times in a row. Just like it's probably statistically impossible. Not yeah, statistically impossible. Not probably. You need a super duper miracle to do it, and sometimes there are some times where you have to admit that it's and we ultimately, the real person, who the real hero is the one who gets to live another day and doesn't give in to this societal pressure of just forcing to get things done, because ultimately they're not who's doing it. They're not the ones who will be paying for your decision, your consequences. And again, we talk about decisions, but what decision? Yeah, are you really in charge? Are you calling the shots, or is some other being who's enclaved or enveloped in your body, in your skin, bag of skin, who's actually calling all the shots, and probably he's pretending to be this weak beta male guy, and that is our body, rides and screams when you hear the term beta male. And we have this, everyone wants to be the hero, no one wants to be the side guy, no one wants to be the Watson, everyone wants to be the Sherlock. And but ultimately, at the end of the day, if no one else does, God will. And that's the genius of God.